Before Stonewall, before Pride, and 6 whole decades before the widespread subcultural zine movement of the 80s, Montreal became home to what is widely considered to be North America's first ever queer zine, Les Mouches Fantastiques, or The Fantastic Files. Today we're going to be talking about Montreal's queer zine history. Let's get started. The zine's origin story revolves around the lesbian poet Elsa Alice Gidlow, who, in the autumn of 1917, placed a letter in the Montreal Daily Star under a pseudonym. She was looking for any organizations of actors or writers in Montreal, and 2 weeks later, she published another letter under her name, inviting anyone interested to meet at her apartment. Of the people who showed up, it was only Roswell George Mills who stood out to her. Mills was a journalist and an editor at the Star who also wrote a female advice column under a pseudonym. He was unabashedly homosexual, one of few openly gay men working in Canadian media at the time, and formed a close friendship with Gidlow, nicknaming her Sappho. The two got to work reading and writing, and in 1918, the first issue of Les Mouches, originally titled Coal from Hades, was published. The zine featured love poetry by Gidlow about other women, articles by Mills defending homosexuality and the intermediate sex, as well as political satires, letters, and commentaries on Canada's engagement in the war. This indicates the activist roots of queer and subcultural zines, and the way queer publication history is, inescapably, a narrative of resistance and boundary pushing. The publication was bilingual, hand-typed, and explored topics which were extremely radical at the time. The publication faced pushback, such as from the famous author H.P. Lovecraft, who criticized the zine's bondage to the lower region of the senses. While the zine ran for only 5 known issues before Gidlow and Mills chose to move to New York City, its impact reached far beyond the city of Montreal. Each issue was mailed in secret along a small, radical publication network, reaching readers from Chicago to Havana. Mail was censored, and homosexuality was actively criminalized at the time, making their act one of radical resistance. Gidlow and Mills used coded language and poetry, but their message was clear. They believed that queer people deserved to exist, to love, and particularly to speak. Today, only a handful of copies of Les Mouches Fantastiques remain in archives in Montreal and San Francisco. But the publication's legacy continues to inspire each next generation of queer zine makers, becoming a beacon of radical, politically grounded creativity. In the 1970s, as the queer rights movement grew, so did zine culture, particularly in response to increased police violence in the lead-up to the 1976 Olympics. Montreal police were raiding gay bars and bathhouses systematically, shaming and arresting queer people across the city. In 1977, infamous raids on the gay bars Trucks and Le Mystique and the arrest of 146 homosexual male patrons sparked protests the next day that led to a violent clash between protesters and the police. In this context of police repression, DIY print culture flourished once more, and queer zine publishing popped up around the city. Newsletters, flyers, and zines began circulating in both English and French. They offered cultural and political critique, sexual health information related to HIV and AIDS, and personal stories and art that could not be published in mainstream publications. By the 80s and 90s, the punk zine movement took hold across North America, and the queer sect of this DIY publishing tradition continued publishing radical, unapologetic, political, locally focused content on drag, gay life, sexual health, social commentary, and political critique. These publications were stocked across cafes, collectives, and music venues in the Plateau and Mile End. And, up until now, queer zine culture remains alive and well in Montreal. Community collections like Dick's Library focus on trans and two-spirit voices. Workshops are held at McGill and Concordia. Archival collections are preserved and displayed. Even digital archives like the Queer Zine Archive Project and local zine fests help popularize the medium and archive their historical impact. Zines, pamphlets, and DIY publishing remain central to intersectional political activism in the city, and the heart of the culture remains true to Gidlow and Mills' original vision. Queer life, political, radical, allowed to exist and speak unapologetically. Okay, so to wrap up, here are my sources. They're also listed in the description below with actual hyperlinks, so you can check out the articles and web pages themselves. That is everything. Thank you so much for watching and engaging with this history. Have a good day.